The late George Carlin once said, "Never argue with a fool. They will only bring you down to their level and beat you with experience." It's actually a Mark Twain quote that he kinda gave his flair to.
Oh, I guess I shouldn't have made this video then.
And while disregard may be the best method for dealing with the reality television man-baby Donald Trump, as citizens, we must also be extra careful not to get caught up in his hateful rhetoric. As citizens, we must also be extra careful not to get caught up in his hateful rhetoric. The reality television man-baby Donald Trump.
How original, insulting the character of Donald Trump. Well, it sure has worked during the last 12 months. Remember when John Oliver stumped the Trump? What an amazing strategy.
American political discourse has gotten increasingly more polarized in the recent years, which led to a hate-spewing candidate like Trump, who is, and I've said this a million times already, just a run-of-the-mill Republican candidate on steroids. And this is what happens when we do react to Trump.
So here he shows a clip of some protesters getting pepper sprayed, presumably to reinforce the narrative that the protesters are peaceful and victims of police brutality. However, I thought it'd be more appropriate to show you the evidence that contradicts the progressive media's narrative.
It should be good. You didn't say anything to anybody? You were just walking out, or what?
I was walking out with our Trump sign. They grabbed my Trump sign and started following me.
Fuck Trump, nigga. You feel me? Fuck Donald Trump, nigga. Fuck that cracker. He's a racist fucker. I'm a racist.
Americans in 42. 42, go ahead.
Targeted with pepper spray. Police say anti-Trump protesters sprayed 5 Trump supporters, including an 8 and 11-year-old girl outside Anaheim City Hall.
Terrible, dude.
As you can see, violence against Trump supporters is widespread. I even tried to look for violence perpetrated by Trump supporters, of which I could only find one incident that occurred at Trump's Chicago rally. The same rally that Trump cancelled due to security threats because of violent protesters who had infiltrated the building, resulting in chaos. Using violence as a means of obtaining political influence in a democracy is of course unjustifiable, regardless of who's doing it. However, it is undeniable that a disproportionate amount of violence is committed by Trump protesters, not supporters.
Similar instances of violence have occurred throughout the primaries, but if the intent is to stop Trump, we need to realize that it's not working. It's only making him stronger. At this stage in the process, violence only makes Trump look like the underdog, as if he isn't the bully, but he's actually the one being bullied by the crazy liberals and establishment media. It's all over his messaging. He says stuff like, "I didn't target the Clintons in a nasty way until they ran a hit piece on me in the New York Times. I'm not causing the violence, these protesters are."
Well, if these statements are supposed to be examples of Trump's deceptive narrative, then it must be partly true based on the footage of the violent protesters.
And part of what Trump is benefiting from is the increase in polarization of the American electorate. A lot of that has to do with the media, and it's not just Fox News. It's not even just mainstream news. We at the Young Turks also play a part in this polarization. Americans now frequent social communities where an algorithm shows us political opinions we tend to favor. We watch the same news sources and dispute facts coming from sources with the opposite bias. We even block people and end friendships with them for supporting opposing candidates.
I actually appreciate this level of honesty. This is the attitude that we need to encourage in the progressive left.
While racial resentment, economic frustration, and mistrust of the establishment are three key drivers of Donald Trump's success,
given that Trump often talks about the dishonest media, the undemocratic nature of the primary process, and unfair trade deals, I can accept the two other factors. But really? Racial resentment? I looked a little around and found a Washington Post article about this, and they had this diagram on their site. The diagram is based on the question, which of these do you think is the bigger problem in this country? Blacks and Hispanics losing out because of a preference for whites, or whites losing out because of a preference for blacks and Hispanics? So this is purely based on the respondents' perceptions of the consequences of favorable treatment based on race, of which a majority of Trump voters in this survey seem to recognize as an issue for whites. Nowhere does it say anything about hatred, resentment, or even racism. I even tried to look for other surveys, but most articles either didn't provide a source or had broken links. If anyone is aware of data regarding support of Trump and racial resentment, feel free to link it in the comments below.
Political divide will only further improve his status amongst GOP voters who may be on the fence by painting Trump as the victim and allowing him to continue with his divisive rhetoric. It's easy for me to stand here and say that violence is not the answer. I understand that Trump's rhetoric makes us feel a certain way, whether we agree or disagree.
Donald Trump's rhetoric, regardless of what you think about it, doesn't erase your personal agency or self-control. If you can't control your emotions, and if you're simply reacting impulsively to people's rhetoric, then maybe, just maybe, you shouldn't be involved in the political process.
That's its intention. That's what he does it for. But the reality is, violence will only make Trump stronger. Any violence those of us on the left direct at Trump will likely be returned to us in spades by his supporters. Except that instead of spades, they own guns. And lots of guns.
Likely based on what? Given the amount of footage out there of violent Trump protesters, we should, based on this person's logic, have seen multiple mass shootings by Trump supporters. Yet, the only example I can find of where Trump supporter and guns were involved is in this news report.
David Grant put this Trump for President sign in his yard on Woodland Drive in Dalton. On Tuesday, he says 3 people walked by his yard and apparently didn't like who he believed in. One man snatched Grant's Trump for President yard sign and threw it into the street.
I said, you got one choice, come and fix the sign, or you ain't going nowhere.
Grant says he wasn't going to let the men get away without putting his sign back, but the 2 adult males and teenager became aggressive.
He said, you fixing to get a cap popped in your ass. And started patting his stomach. His friends did. And started brandishing a handgun.
Grant says his neighbor who lives across the street had his back the whole time.
Neighbor was standing out here beside his driveway, and he sees him pull the gun out, and he looks at me, Dad, in the eye, and he says, I got you, hang on. He runs in the house, comes back out with his pistol. And he looks at the guy with the other pistol, and he says, nobody shooting him.
Their actions caught up with them. Dalton police found the trio on Avenue E. They now sit behind bars with a laundry list of charges.
One of the individuals, the person that actually picked up the sign, is charged with criminal trespass right now, and that's for damaging the sign. As far as all the rest of the charges, obviously, the gentleman with the gun is facing an aggravated assault charge.
Just to make sure we're all on the same page about this, 3 thugs walked down a road, snatched a Trump sign on private property, threw it into the street, and when confronted by the owner, they started threatening him with a handgun.
We on the left have the moral authority to decry Trump's rhetoric as divisive and inciting violence.
This explains a lot. If you're convinced that you have the moral authority, and perhaps even the responsibility, to dismiss your opposition, then it's no surprise that the progressive left act as they do. As the proverb goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
But when we adopt violent tactics ourselves, we not only lose that moral authority, but we also unwittingly play into Trump's efforts to further debase the debate and drag us down to his level. And Trump has a lot more experience down there than we do. The reality television man baby Donald Trump